Hi everyone. So I was asked by a viewer recently whether INFJs on average are less likely to be addicted, to technology. So things like internet, iPads, other gadgets, other technological stuff. And well, I'm going to answer through sort of exploring a bit more about this relationship that INFJs have with technology, because it's a very important question, and it is a question, a topic of existential importance, I really strongly believe at this stage, to INFJ flourishing. Probably flourishing of other types too, by the way. Not all types, but other types. But I'm focused on the INFJ experience in this instance. So are INFJs less likely to be addicted to technology? I think yes, less addicted than average, and there are reasons for that. But I think the risk of becoming addicted or simply just becoming used to and engaging too much of it is still very much present. It's still very much real, and it's a problem. It's a problem for the INFJ. Now, I'm not saying every INFJ should become a Luddite, avoid technology at all costs, of course not. But there's such a thing as moderation. And as you will see that here, we're not really talking about moderation for moderation's sake. We're not talking about a kind of technological asceticism. We really are talking about what INFJs are like. What are they like mentally? What are they like spiritually, behaviorally, in terms of their interests, in terms of what motivates them, in terms of what drives them, in terms of their vision, in terms of what they think of themselves for the future. And there are hurdles that are laid out by too much engagement of technology in the case of INFJs. So in the first place, why is it that INFJs are less addicted to technology than the average person? Well, you see, the answer to the first question is directly linked to the answer to the second, okay? INFJs have holistic meaning-making minds through their dominant perceiving axis, NI dominant function, SE inferior function. They are people who experience a certain sense of disengagement from external reality. Doesn't mean that they're not in external reality, but they sense that they belong to another world which has its own laws, its own logic, its own patterns and substance, which is what I call the NI world, because I strongly believe that NI gives a world when NI is in a dominant position. Now, the NI world has an oceanic phenomenological experience to it. It's not regimented, it's not as rules-based, it's not as normative, it's not as sort of, block-based as what society nowadays is, societies tend to be like, and their rules, their norms, their styles of efficiency, their governing principles. So INFJs always have to kind of negotiate between these two realms. In a sense, INFJ flourishing is, you could sort of describe INFJ flourishing as the art of developing a system of habits whereby that bridging between the two worlds becomes more or less effortless. So the flow of the oceanic experience is able to overlap at certain critical junctures with the substance of external reality and its typically regimented structure. And that's how INFJs make a difference. That's how INFJs become individuated, spiritualized, so on and so forth. So that's INFJ flourishing. But when I'm saying this, I'm saying that in order to achieve this, what's quite crucial is to have deep reverence, in some sense, for NI dominance. Now, to be more precise, because this sounds a little bit narcissistic, what's important is to have dominance for the world that NI gives. Like I said, NI gives a world that is experienced phenomenologically. It's a little bit it floats a bit, it kind of levitates a bit, it has a certain flow to it, it's a bit slower, Things merge into each other. There's no real separation between things, like as arbitrary as in the external world, and its love of categories and lists and demarcations and discriminations, which have their own use. I'm not saying they don't, but that's not how the world that NI gives works. Now, in order to really engage on a path of individuation, if there is to be a bridging between these two worlds, through accessing particular interstices, openings in the gap, openings in the fabric of external reality, whereby the NI water, if you want to call it that, is allowed to flow into these crevices in order to bring NI energy into external reality and make a difference and bring meaning. Well, NI, the particular temporality and spatiality that is typical of the NI experience has to be revered enough to be fully acknowledged, accepted, and integrated. It's hard sometimes to integrate because of all the demands that external reality and its regimented sense of order and duty and organization imposes on us. So there's often going to be a temptation to flee NI, like in the compliant INFJ's case, adaptive submission. The thing is, technology may not look like it is exactly like that at first, but in fact, the particular structure of technology, temporal and spatial structure of technology, is not consonant, for the most part, with the NI experience. Because technology is the temporality of a technological experience. Look at social media. Look at the attention span of the average person who's addicted to social media. Look at the predominance of shorts. Look at the unreality of attachments we may form to people we've never met. There is a certain sense in which that's quite opposed to NI experience. It's not incarnated. It's hyper fast-paced. It's completely splintered into different isolated little experiences across the day. There's no continuity between the experiences. So no continuity and a temporality that is massively accelerated and moving from pleasure to pleasure, consumption to consumption. That is very, very opposed to the sort of constant merging continuity and relatively slow speed of the movements intrinsic to the NI experience. So when an INFJ develops an addiction to that, of course they're less likely to develop an addiction because they're built not to respond to it as easily as, say, a PE dominant, like SE dominant or NE dominant, because it's going to feel, at least at first, quite jarring. But you can move beyond that on the condition that you repress, that you sort of empty out the NI experience of its kernel. And then once you're caught into that web, you're essentially going to become quite unconsciously used to functioning according to what is demanded of you by this kind of technological, rational, cause and effect type mode of functioning, which is also hyper fast-paced, doesn't really care about connecting past and future through the medium of the present, the long term, either long, sort of like far back in the past or far into the future, the fusion of horizons, all fundamental traits of INFJ meaningful experience, key INFJ flourishing as a project for an INFJ, are going to be curtailed. They're going to be blinkered. And so you should beware. You should beware because there's no better way of alienating yourself from external reality in the negative sense, in the super severed sense. There's no better way than to develop a kind of technology addiction. Partly because it has this devious tendency to not really show itself to be such. It can seem to offer you a lot of freedom, but it doesn't. And again, for the sake of your own flourishing, as an NI dominant, as an INFJ, you should use it with moderation for the reasons I enunciated. Don't punish yourself, enjoy it, but you'll feel all the better for being able to exercise moderation. You'll feel better because you'll show yourself that you're able to have self-control, to respect yourself, and in fact, you'll know also that your flourishing is thereby enabled. Give me a like if you enjoyed this vid, guys. Don't forget that I write a lot about INFJs in the modern world, how they can flourish, how they can deal with technology, how they can find their own meaning, how they can remain authentic to themselves, basically how they can individuate themselves and assert themselves while remaining true to their nature as INFJs, and seeing the INFJ as a whole field of possibility rather than a restrictive conception of what an INFJ is. The book to get is The Infinite Soul, Be an Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World. The link is right below, guys. Check the reviews. It's fresh out of the oven, relatively speaking. And the prequel, of course, is The Ecstatic Soul, which is the deepest look at the INFJ personality in terms of the INFJ mind and consciousness that you'll find online. What's it like to think like an INFJ, to be an INFJ, to experience life as an INFJ? If you want to know more, there's no deeper book than this. Okay, the link is below as well. Don't forget, Patreon is the lifeblood of my channel, guys. I very much depend on your kind support. Please consider joining. You get access to bonus videos, you get access to the community, to me, priority for questions, and many other things. I depend on your kind generosity for this channel and to keep producing good videos for you every day. So the link is below. In the meantime, see you soon, guys. Bye-bye.